All right, so you're working on improving those high notes. You want to learn how to sing them with more ease, more comfort. That's exactly what we're going to cover today.
Run, run, lost boy, they say to me.
The very first thing that's really important to realize when it comes to high notes is that there's many different definitions of what high notes are. And assuming what some people are referring to when they talk about high notes could lead to mistakes. So let's go through the gamut of high notes and what they could be. So there are falsetto high notes, which are notes that are higher in our range, but airy or breathy. Falsetto. It's got a breathy quality to it, and that makes it called falsetto. But it's all within the head range. So it's all in that sort of lighter, softer part of the voice. Then we have head voice, which would be like, ooh. That's a non-airy sound that's up in the head register. So it's got that softer, gentler approach with that release of head voice, but it's not breathy. Ha, whoo. Very different sort of sound. So when we're using our head voice, there's a lot more power that we can get out of it. And that's another form of high notes that we could be singing. The other form of high note is what we call mix or full voice. That's where we take this voice, the voice I'm speaking in, and we raise it up. Ah. So that high note is different than the woo or the or that falsetto one. There's a different sort of quality. There's more intensity behind it. And by and large, those of you that click this video, I'm sure most of you are after that sort of high note, not the sort of high note. That's first and foremost. And we're going to go through how to access all of them. And it's important to be able to access all of them and where they kind of all fit into this puzzle of high notes. The other thing that we're going to talk about is specifically when it comes to high notes, that it's very relative. So for a female, this note might be a high. For a male, this note might be high. And for a really, really low male voice, this note might be high. So, for some heavier voices, might be a really high note. For, many male mid-range singers, that's a high note. And then for females, that might be a high note. So it's really dependent on what the abilities of the singer are and what the natural qualities that singer has in their voice. So if you're a singer that has a very light sort of Michael Jackson, always talking up here type of sound, if that's how you talk, then that's most likely going to mean that the high notes are going to be much higher in the range than if you talk like this. Hey man, how's it going? Like if you have that sort of deeper sort of sound, then the high notes are going to be much lower than for Michael Jackson. All right, so let's talk about pitfall number one when people are achieving high notes. A lot of people think that high notes need to be difficult. High notes don't need to be hard in order to achieve them. Believe it or not, even that full voice sound doesn't need to be hard in order to produce. It can be strong, it can be thick, and it can use a lot of energy to get there, but it doesn't have to be hard, and it shouldn't feel like a lot of pain to get there. That's a very important note. When we're talking about pain, we're talking about pain in the throat, and effort from the throat is no good when it comes to singing high notes. So let's go over a few exercises that will first get you into your falsetto high notes, because those are going to be the easiest ones. And believe it or not, as we migrate from falsetto high notes to head voice high notes to full voice high notes, we're really only going to be changing the way that we use our lower body to support the sound. So falsetto, that sort of sound doesn't need a lot of intense pressure from my abdomen to press that out, because there's not a lot of resistance. The vocal cords are pretty wide open. They're barely touching when I'm making that sound. So with this, we've got very, very, it's going to increase the flexibility of the vocal cords, and we don't need to push a lot. So let's start with that. Let's go. just a really breathy tone. Ah. Join along with me. Ah. 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 With falsetto, there will be an upper maximum for me. I'm kind of topping out around there. Up past that point, my breathy sound won't go any higher without straining. So then we just drop it back down. Now, let's get into the head voice tone. So this is where we're going to use that woo sort of sound to be able to close the vocal cords, create a non-airy or breathy sound as we go through our high notes. So let's do that with an ooh, but it's going to be a really strong ooh, not a whoo, which is falsetto and breathy. Ooh. So we want to get a stronger approach, but it's not going to be super strong to the point where it goes to full voice. Ooh. Also, for the higher notes, we're going to have to drop the jaw a little bit. So as we drop the jaw, we want to keep the lips narrow. And back down. And just for the purposes of time, I'm not going to go all the way back down, but you would go back down that scale. Cool. That's our ooh sound. Now, those are the foundation for being able to take full voice sound up higher. And this could be a really helpful tool to first do it in falsetto and find what a falsetto sound should feel like in the throat, and then try to keep that same feeling in the throat, the same ease that you have in the throat with the ah in falsetto, and bring that into your full voice sound. So I'll give you an example. If I go ah, falsetto, and then I go to full voice, ah, in here, should feel pretty much the same. The only difference that I'm feeling is as I'm doing this, I'm feeling a good strong press from my abdomen. My abdomen's moving inwards. Oh! So the abdomen is squeezing in tightly as we do that. Oh! And a great way to get a feel for these high notes and try to carry through the right release that you've got is to do this on the full voice sound, but start off with falsetto. Ah, memorize that open feeling in the throat. Ah, try to get that same feeling. It shouldn't feel tight. Ah, ah. Ah, 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 ah. So let me know how in the comments down below how that feels. Doing the falsetto next to the full voice sound. You're going to notice that if you're doing it correctly where you're drawing over the stuff that's working really well in the falsetto sound into the full voice sound, it will be pretty easy. And you might surprise yourself that you're able to go higher than you would normally. The final piece I want to leave you with when it comes to singing high notes is anxiety. when we are singing high notes, even if we're singing by ourselves, we're most likely going to get nervous because we think, like, built up in our mind is high notes equals hard. This is a hard thing to do. The moment we start to tell ourselves that and that becomes our script, then we're going to fulfill that promise. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So instead of doing that, what I want you to think is they don't have to be hard, and prove it to yourself with the falsetto. Ah, ah. They don't need to be that different. They're really quite similar. Just one has a little bit more support from the abdomen and is a little bit more intense. It's a little bit more, has a little bit more intention behind it. And this is a really great way to start to release some of that anxiety and that nervousness that might be around high notes for yourself. So if this was helpful, I highly recommend clicking the link down below. I've got a whole course that's going to walk through step by step being able to develop high notes in a very methodic way in your voice. So I highly recommend checking that out down below. And if you want to learn more about the voice and you like my teaching style, please check out this video right here, where you're going to get a lot more details on improving your voice and tutorials on what to learn. So I'll see you in the next one.